anyway, we took the tree down, and of course it's a blue spruce, and you know, I don't want to throw it away, but it was too old. But I did take it down to the farm because I thought, well, this would be a good thing for teaching with. Took it down to the farm, we chipped it, we put it in the distillery and distilled it, and the oil came out black. And yet this is a beautiful black spruce tree. I mean, Juan, you've seen it, you've been in our homes, you've been in our home and seen it. You know, and it's a beautiful, beautiful tree, but it's 40 years old and the oil was black. So it's just kind of like some of us, we get old, if they distilled us, it wouldn't turn out that good. So we're better to be distilled when we're young, so. But oils change in the plant, just like we change inside of us as we age. So there's a time factor of distilling a plant when it's prime, and when you keep it in the prime.
How to store and sort all your photos and videos in seconds.
Lost.
No computer knowledge required.
Get out of it.
This little device is...
Now, annual plants like lavender, rosemary...
Oh boy, we've got to go on to that, and then I've got to edit out that in the video.
Those of you who have been at the winter harvest,
and
you know
also
that we try to keep the trees that we're harvesting under 20 years.
On each one.
Our trees, in fact, those that were winter harvest the last 4 years, no, we've been harvesting in an area over, we call it the buffalo pasture, because the neighbor has buffalo. Those trees are between 25 and 30 years old, and the oil production is half of a 15 or 20-year-old tree. So the older they get, the less oil they manufacture, and also the less limbs on the bottom part of the tree because they'll start falling off and not getting adequate sun. So there's so many things that can contribute to producing a bad outcome even with a good plant or good material. And it's just like this right here. If they left this set for 2 or 3 days, the outcome wouldn't be as great as if it was distilled today. So that's why you don't see a lot of bags sitting around here that's already prepared to go for that very reason. So it happens. The other thing in distillation that's really critical is when you load the chamber, you know, getting the material spread evenly in the chamber, getting it compressed evenly. And when you're distilling chips and sawdust, this is easy to do. It's really easy to get a nice uniform compression in the chamber. If you don't, like when we're distilling lavender or hyssop or goldenrod, clary sage, you know, that are more stemmy plants, it's really easy for them to get in a ball, and then you have a little pocket of air here and another ball, cluster of plants. You get those air pockets down inside of your distillation. When the steam hits those air pockets, it drops the temperature of the steam within 10 to 15 degrees. When that happens, it'll cause condensation to take place right inside the distilling chamber. So you'll reduce the outcome of oil that's pulled out of the material, but that's one part of it. The other part of it is when you create condensation or condensing inside the steam chamber, it doesn't extract all of the molecules. It'll only extract part of them. So it'll leave some of those molecules still inside the fiber of the plant material. And how do you know that? Is when you take the plant material out, you can smell it. It still smells like the oil is there, and it smells that way because it is still there. You got maybe 1/3% of the molecules out. Why did the other molecules stay there? Because the condensing caused the temperature inside the plant material to drop below the extraction need. You've got to have, like this here is going to extract the best at 280 degrees. So if you drop this temperature down to 230 degrees, which you still got steam, it's not going to extract. The molecules are going to stay in that fiber because it's not hot enough to stimulate the enzyme activity enough to open the molecules and activate the enzymes to break that cellulose down to let those molecules out. And so a lot of that oil molecule will stay in the fiber, and that's called homogenizing. And once it homogenizes, it goes into the plant fiber, you can't get it back out. You've lost it, period. So then there's the story that you hear about first distillation, second distillation, third distillation. What does that mean? Do we do second, third distillations?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes, no, maybe.
The maybe is closer to right for one plant. For one plant only. Okay, so what does it mean? First distillation is what you're seeing from today. So what they'll do is they'll run it for 12 hours, or in our case, if it's black spruce, we'll run it for 4 hours. Blue spruce, 3.5 hours. Balsam, 3 hours. Lavender, an hour and 15 minutes. When that oil has reached what we feel the critical level of production, we shut it off, because there's a point of no return. I mean, lavender, you can distill lavender for 3 hours and there'd still be fine molecules coming over. But the cost to run the boiler at $150 an hour for diesel versus getting out 1/16 of an ounce of oil, we'd have to charge you $2,000 a bottle for lavender. So there's that point where we have to cut it off to make it affordable. And I make that determination by distilling and analyzing to determine where the best quality molecules and the best quantity of molecules are at that certain duration time where we cut it off. And once we shut the steam off, distillation is over. In the exception of one plant that Young Living distills 2 times. And I want you to be really clear about this. It's clary sage, all right? There's a molecule in clary sage called sclerol, and it is the most sought after molecule in the clary sage industry, period. Sought after by R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco company. They use sclerol as a tobacco flavoring and stabilizer. So they want all the sclerol they can get out of the plant. Clary sage only runs at about 2%, 2.5% sclerol. There's been some cases on certain years that they've seen sclerol go up as high as 4.6%. R.J. Reynolds has the largest clary sage fields in America, and they distill it strictly for the sclerol. They extract the sclerol off through flash freezing and crystallization, and then the rest of the clary sage is sold to Young Living. Thank you. Thank you. No, it's not. It's sold to other oil companies that you know. All right? But because they don't care about that little bit of sclerol missing in clary sage. And it's really easy to buy synthetic sclerol and put back in it, even though sclerol is relatively expensive to manufacture.
How should women cook sweet potatoes when they want to burn fat? It doesn't matter, right? Actually, it matters a lot.
She's monetized her webpage.
I made a discovery in 1996 that revolutionized clary sage distilling. And it was just, my opinion, an act of God. We were distilling clary sage, been running for 45 minutes. We had most of the molecules over, and the water supply line to the boiler broke underground. So naturally we shut down really quick, and as I was going to get the backhoe to start digging up the water line so we could fix it, I turned to my crew as they said, well, Gary, what do you want us to do? And I said, well, go ahead and start unloading and clean it out. We'll reload, so when I got the line fixed, we can be ready to go again. Because, you know, in my mind, there's no point in going any further. And as I walked across the distillery yard to get on the tractor, just this little voice that said, no, wait. And I stopped, and I almost went, what? It was so audible to me. And I turned around to the crew, and I said, guys, wait. We're going to try an experiment. They looked at me, what do you mean, Gary? And I said, we're going to try an experiment. Let's just leave it. Let's just leave it. And so we did. It took us an hour and a half to get the water line fixed, get the boiler back on, get it back up to temperature. And then we distilled again. And I distilled for another 45 minutes. Our sclerol came out at 7.2%. And it was a shock to the whole industry, because when I called my partner, Jean Noël, in France, and told him and Marcel about getting this level of sclerol, they said, Gary, come on, that's not possible. So I sent the oil to them. Dr. Casablanca analyzed it, confirmed to them that yes, I was right. They couldn't believe it. They want to know how I did it, because Marcel had been distilling clary sage for 40 years, and his father before him and before him and before him had never seen it. Well, what happened? By shutting the distillery down and resting it, allowed the enzymes to activate the cellulose in the fiber of the clary sage stems where the sclerol resided, and allowed it to come out. Now, we didn't get a lot of other molecules, but we got sclerol. So when we distill clary sage, and incidentally, when Jean Noël and Benoit distilled clary sage in France, they distilled for 45 minutes, shut down for 30 minutes, and distilled for 45 minutes again to get the sclerol. Then both batches are mixed together as one. That is the only case where there's two distillations with one plant in Young Living. And now other people have heard about it, caught on to it. But what is the true form of first distillation, second distillation, third distillation? I'll tell you. This is first distillation. Now, if I was going to do a second distillation, I would send all you distillers home. And I would back in a Dow chemical truck and hook it to the boiler. So the chemicals went across the steam and into this, because with chemicals in the steam, I can extract more oils out of the sandalwood. So they do a second distillation with chemicals, and then they will even do a third distillation with chemicals. That happens even in the commercial industry with lavandin. So you have first, second, third distillation. But it's all done with chemical extraction and steam, not pure steam. Because if I fired up that, I could let that distillery set overnight with the sandalwood sawdust in it, come back tomorrow, fire it up, and distill it again, and I would get some more oil, but it'd be almost black. And it wouldn't be anything that I would consider using. So it's not worth it, but there are companies that will take that and then they will structure it what they want and put it out there on the market as a second distillation. So there's a lot of false information. There's a lot of adulterating that takes place other than just in a laboratory cutting the oil. I even watch it where they'll take lavandin and distill them together in the same cook. And then they will restructure that after it comes off. They will take Melissa, which is commonly called lemon balm, and distill it with lemongrass to call it Melissa. And that's really common. I've watched them distill in the Reunion Islands. I've watched them distill lemongrass and citronella and bottle it as Melissa. They're so much. In the cinnamon industry, the same thing. Cassia is widely available, and it's a beautiful oil, but it has different properties, as you know. But cassia now is going into the market structured to look like cinnamon because it's cheaper and more readily available. So as we go forward, you're gonna, and I will, because I'm making this a point now, as I'm restructuring the seed to seal process, to have a education page that they're building now to go on the internet that we'll be able to put information on, like a newsletter, to keep people informed of what's going on in the farms and different ways that people adulterate, different ways they cut, different ways of distillation that can change things. And then you've got hydrodistillation, you've got dry steam distillation, you've got wet steam distillation. All different types of distillation can change the outcome of the oil as well. So if you don't understand distillation,
this revolutionary new device can remove up to 10 times more earwax than a traditional cotton swab.
Good on you.
You don't have a way of knowing what type of oil and what quality of oil you should have from a distillation. So if you're just a broker, you go onto a farm, like a broker can come here and check the oil and say, oh, this seems really good, and you wouldn't know the difference. And it could have been a hydrodistillation of sandalwood, which would reduce the sandalwood in the sandalwood oil, but he wouldn't know it. So, essential oil industry, I could probably be safe in saying, without even an exaggeration, that it's one of the most corrupt cartels in the world. Because it was created for the perfume industry, number one, and number two, the food flavoring industry. And the perfume industry, they don't care one molecule from another. It's the cost, what it takes to get that. And so they drive the prices down. They drive the farmer to put on heavy chemicals to try to maximize production. You know, it's a whole cycle of what goes on to drive the market. And when you understand that the perfume industry dictates 80% of the essential oil world market, what's called aromatherapy falls on the bottom 2%. So they don't have a voice. And because the aromatherapy market, as it's called for us, doesn't have a voice, that's why I started developing farms. Because I knew that I would not live long enough to impact the essential oil industry and dictate a standard that I wanted. And I knew the only way that I could create a standard that I wanted for my people was to create it and develop myself. And the only way I could do that was by controlling the fields and the distillation. So this year I'm making a huge push with all of our partner growers and distillers out there that we're going to downsize our vendors to just a few that we're controlling 100%. You know, I'd like to say we're controlling 100% now, but it wouldn't be true because we can't reach out to 40 different growers right now and keep an eye on all 40 of them during the harvest and during the distillation. I have to rely on their integrity and their honesty. And for the most part, they've done a really well job. But we're just taking it to the next step higher now, to where Young Living will be monitoring every single oil that's distilled in Young Living this year. And there'll be no question. Like the last batch of Blue Tansy that came, they tested it, they sent it to me, I smelled it, I didn't see the GC, they just sent the oil home with Mary and said, you know, will you have Gary just do a smell test and see if he would pass this? I think part of it was that secretly they didn't want me to know that there was a thuone compound in it that's not supposed to be there, because it didn't affect the smell at all to them. But I smelled it as soon as I took it out of the bag. And I said to Mary, I said, this couldn't possibly meet the test. Why did they send it home with you? Anyway, so I called Mike and he says, Gary, it's got thuone in it. He said, what do you want us to do? And I said, send it back. So I sent it back. And, you know, and everybody just went, oh. Because we knew what it meant. And we knew all the calls that would be on the phone saying, $1.
So is that compound a chemical, or is that just an
No,
extra compound in
they-
the plant that shouldn't be there?
What they did is I'm saying the people that wildcrafted in Morocco, they probably gathered it with some mugwort, because thuone comes from mugwort, or that particular thuone did. Very common in mugwort. So my feeling is they still mugwort in with the Blue Tansy to create more volume.
Gary,
So Gary,
When
you
the-
know
when
the
the
other
oil-
company that has it.
when the oil is in the root,
Pardon?
when the oil is in the root, that's the time the plants grow on the top, right? That's when the plant increases in size at the top in the summertime. And when it goes to the leaves, it just protects it during the winter. Is that right?
In the trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just protects it in the wintertime. That's why we cut the top and chip them. We chip them only in the
Well, in the wintertime, well, it's not just the tops, it's the whole tree.
yeah. But what I'm saying is when the oil is in the root,
Yeah.
that's the only time that it grows on
Oh,
top.
yes, okay, to redefine that. The oil in the tree
is like the blood in your body. It's the transport mechanism of the minerals and the nutrients that's taken up by the roots. That's carried up into the tree, and then the oxygen molecules that's absorbed through the needles combine with it to create the essential oil. That happens after 52 degrees. Then that starts migrating and transporting the nutrients up to stimulate the growth for the limbs and the needles. So in conifer trees, you watch them in the spring and you'll see the end of the limbs, the branches, they'll have about 2 inches that are a very, almost a fluorescent green color. That's the brand new growth that develops through that summer cycle that will be about, by the time that cycle shuts down, it'll grow between 6 and 8 inches. And then as soon as it gets cold, the oil migrates back into the roots and changes its phase and comes back up, not as oil, but not as nutrients in the summer, because it's a transporter for nutrients in the summer, but in the winter it converts and comes back as vapor to go into the branches and the needles as antifreeze, a substance to prevent freezing and death to the plant. So it's a preserving agency to take the plant through the cold winter. So that's the whole mechanism of the oil migration up and down the tree. Now in plants, you say the same thing. They go dormant in the winter, and then they come back in the spring. So they go back into the roots. And with lavender particularly, and when we harvest lavender, you notice that once it's cut, it's like it has a bonnet on it, kind of like a mushroom. The main purpose of that is that mushroom protects the roots so they don't winter kill. And during the winter, they're gathering and collecting nutrients to give the plant strength to get through the winter months to prepare it for rebirth again in the spring and giving birth. So it's a beautiful phenomenon, just to watch it happen, grow and produce oil.
Thank you.
Vaughn, you had a question?
Well, I just said, when she asked, can you send it back? The world of oils is very small.
Yeah.
So we know where those oils go.
Yeah.
Because it's, when you're in the industry, there's a oil cartel. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a small world.
exactly.
So we know what companies take those oils.
Yep.
So.
What about our farms? Can you clarify with that?
Yes, Jen.
April. Sister.
April.
She's Jen at this moment. And I have to tell you why. Because, where is Jen? She's not here. Because I called Jen April. Anyway, so now we're good.
She had asked you about what we do with, like you gave the example of the blue tansy being sent back. Will you clarify with what you do with it on our farms? I mean, we don't send it back because it's our farm. So what do you do with rejected oil from our farm?
Or do we ever
Okay.
have?
A good question.
Do we ever have rejected oils?
Absolutely. And all 3 of those people have headstones now. But anyway, have I rejected oils on our farm? Yes. And here's why. Is because they overheated the process and the distillation and scorched the oil. Any oil that doesn't meet my standard, whether it's on my farm or another farm, is rejected. The only difference between my oils that I reject, I reuse them. I put them in my spray as an herbicide. And we put them out like basil. I'll mix it with, I've had some bad basil in the past. Haven't for a number of years, but I still use basil. But if I get bad oil, I'll mix it with basil. I'll mix it with tansy, not blue tansy, Idaho tansy. I mix it with Palo Santo as a spray for the plants. Like an actual herbicide, we do that. So there's not too much bad oil that doesn't get used in a way. I've made horse spray with it because it's not that it's 100% bad, but it's off. All the molecules are distorted, not all of them, but some of them are distorted a little bit. The ketones are fractured, so the fragrance has changed. And most people don't smell it, but I can smell it. I can tell when it's been burnt or scorched. And so I'll use it around the animal pens, you know, spraying flies and things like that, because it still has some value. I won't use it
But
for the
you're not
distributor
selling
market.
it to any other companies.
Pardon?
You're not selling it.
Oh geez, I dump it down the drain first.
I mean, I guess that's what really everybody wanted to hear,
Yeah.
the bottom line.
If another company had my bad oils, they'd be starting to get good quality.
And can you talk about our peppermint oil, which smelled differently 2 years ago, maybe? Remember? We have a batch of the peppermint
Oh, the
oil.
peppermint.
Shelton thing,
The-
that was a Melissa Shelton thing with the oil.
Oh,
That was 2012. wasn't
yeah.
it?
That was a story that was almost the same as our cinnamon.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a person again that knew absolutely nothing what she was talking about, wanted to be an authority, wanted to become important, and didn't have a clue what she was talking about. I'm not even going to go there because I don't even remember all the details, and it isn't worth it. But it was just another, just like cinnamon.
No, I mean, why it was.
Why do different
Why?
batches of
Yeah.
peppermint
Why
have
do they
different
smell
smells?
different?
Why do they
Oh.
smell different?
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
not as
Okay,
pleasant as
Yeah.
other times.
I'm going to ask you all a question now. It's my turn. How many of you want your oils to smell the same all the time?
Nope.
Can I give my take? I mean, come on, if you buy a watermelon or a vegetable, sometimes it tastes good, sometimes the weather. Sometimes a little more sugary, sometimes
Call Mother Nature.
hard.
Yeah.
Great.
It's going to say wine, yeah.
What maybe will help you is to know, is this like today? The weather condition changes, the humidity changes, the barometric pressure changes from week to week, season to season, and those changes affect the oil. And to give you just an example, even the changes will vary from, I call it longitude to longitude on our world globe. Latitude also, whether it's the southeastern hemisphere below the 45th parallel or the northwestern hemisphere above the 45th parallel, weather changes affect plants. You cannot, in fact, I can tell you this, from when I start harvesting lavender, which will be the last week of June, until I finish my harvest the 15th of July, the generally our window, the oil I produce here and the oil I produce here doesn't have the same exact chemistry. It is impossible. The only way you can have the exact same chemistry is manufactured in a laboratory.
That's right.
Okay? So if you want the same chemistry, you're in the wrong place. But that's why you'll get variances in smell. If the summer temperature is cool, the methone and the methanol content of peppermint will be lower than if it's hot. So just temperature will vary the percentage of certain molecules in an oil that will affect the fragrance. And that's all. Simple as that. You will also get certain molecules like in spearmint, which is carvone, makes up about, with all the carbones combined, it can make up about 60% in spearmint. You distill spearmint in Louisiana, you'll have maybe 48% carbones. You distill spearmint in Utah, you can have 62% carbone. Does that mean that the spearmint in Louisiana is bad spearmint? No. It's just that in Louisiana, they had a cool summer, and Utah had a hot summer. The next year, it could be the reverse of that. So what do I do when I'm looking for a quality of oil? I look for a range that those molecules fall into to determine, are they balanced, number one. So do I have the right amount of carvone compared to methone? Do I have the right amount of carvone, methone compared to the esters that I want? Are all of those molecules in sequential balance? That's what I look for. As long as they're in sequential balance, I'm not concerned if they vary a little bit, because that's what nature does. And if I'm contrary to that, I'm contrary to God. And I'm saying, hey, you don't know how to do your job. No, let me take over here. You know, so we'll always have that as long as we deal with nature. And it's something, again, that sets us apart of recognizing that we're not in charge. But where we make the difference is how we distill it, how we harvest it. Do we harvest it at the right time to capture the majority? You'll never capture 100% because you're going to have some loss just in the harvesting and the transporting and the processing. You know, it's just part of it. But again, it's capturing the essence and not losing the essence. Even if you lose, you know, 0.1% of a molecule, you'll still have the essence. You'll still have that energy. And it's so critical because we're energetic beings. Everything is energy. And once we know that, then we look for that has balanced harmonics. And it works. So there's just so much in the whole process of studying to understand why lavender today doesn't smell the same as it did 2 years ago. And yet, next year, holy cow, it smells like it did last year. And that happens a lot. I have distributors that will say, I prefer Idaho lavender over Utah lavender. I prefer Idaho lavender over French lavender. We get that all the time, you know. But if I handed you a GC of all three of them, you go, well, which one is Idaho's? So what makes a difference? What does some people feel the difference? Why do some people, in fact, is there anybody here that prefers St. Mary's lavender? We don't market St. Mary's lavender today separate. We did up till a couple of years ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of you here that had St. Mary's lavender. How many of you preferred St. Mary's lavender over the rest? Bingo. Okay, why? Why? It has nothing to do with the molecules in the oil that you liked. It's the frequency. The St. Mary's lavender grows in a whole different environment. And it's in a very non-polluted, very high spiritual area where St. Mary's is at. What you're connecting to is the spiritual harmonics of the St. Mary's lavender that's greater than Utah or France. Because Utah has a freeway going by the field, and France has all this and that, and it's life. St. Mary's is very isolated, very protected, but can we grow enough lavender in St. Mary's for young living? Not a chance, so it's very special.
The equatorial belt is moving. Are you aware of that?
What?
The equatorial belt is moving as we speak. It's moving, and they even know where it's shifting to. I will send you that video.
Okay.
Okay, and that could be one of your variances as well.
It can be. There's a lot of things that contribute to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, anything? Yes.
I'm very excited to hear the emotional part of the convention that you're going to speak on. I think it's 2 hours, so emotional oils. Can you give us a little preview about
Who told you it was 2 hours?
The schedule said 2 hours.
Well, they'll make a mistake if they put me on stage for 2 hours.
Probably much more.
What am I going to do?
What are you going to talk about? That's my favorite part about the oils, is the emotional aspect.
Come to convention.
Yeah, it doesn't work with Palo Santo either. So why does it only work with clary sage? Because the molecular weight of the sclerone is so different. Oh. You got a question?
Yeah, just byproducts. I mean, you do a first distillation and you're going to have byproduct. What is typically done with byproduct? I mean, maybe it's going to vary from plant to plant, but do you, like, we sell the chips, there's the finer Sandalwood, and then there's the second, and then there's this which you distill. So with this byproduct, another byproduct of all of the plants, do you sell them to, what happens? And like maybe it's a case by case basis, but generally, is it used for other things? may not be used necessarily for a young living essential oil, but it is used for another.
The question is, what do we do with the byproduct of distillation? And believe me, when we're distilling, and for all of those of you who've been to the winter harvest, and you've seen the mountain of chips that come out of the distillation, and what do we do with those? And for years, I've been doing different studies and looking at different ideas of what do we do with those chips. And so what we're doing right now in Fort Nelson excites me because I bought a pellet plant in Fort Nelson. That'll be installed this fall. And so everything that comes out of the distillation of the Fort Nelson factory is going into pellets, to make pellets. Now, just this year, our chips coming out of Highland, we finally got a contract with a pulp mill to take the chips. And so those chips are going to a pulp mill now to be cleaned and recycled for paper. And paper. In Utah, the lavender, the clary sage, we call it straw. Byproduct of distillation is straw. That's easy because we put it into a compost pile and then we mix it with the manure from the animal park there at the farm and grind it up, and then every year it goes back on the field. And we put back every year over 300,000 tons of compost. And simply because, for those that don't know it, the distillery in Utah runs 11 and a half months out of the year now, never shuts down. Ecuador runs 11 and a half months out of the year. Generally, yeah, very consistent 6 days a week, once in a while 7 days, but 6 days a week in Ecuador. Fort Nelson, this year we're still distilling in Fort Nelson. It'll be shutting down. It could shut down any day. Last year we ran till the 15th of June at Fort Nelson, but last week, shipped this. We were 82 degrees last week in Fort Nelson. Yeah. And actually, we were exactly 40 degrees warmer there than Salt Lake City. Yeah, it was amazing. And the temperatures are staying in the 70s, mid to high 70s right now in Fort Nelson. There'll be a day that'll drop down in the 60s, but our temperatures in Fort Nelson all this last winter were an average of 35 degrees warmer. Our coldest night in Fort Nelson this past season was 22 below one night. And when Chip was up there working with me last year week, we're down 45 below. And then it got cold after he left. So I think he knew it was coming, so he said, I'm headed home for Christmas. He was smarter than I was. But yeah, we got down to 55 below last year, which was more normal temperature for Fort Nelson. But our coldest was just one night at 21 below, 25 below, and then it stayed around 20. Yeah. Especially when you fly from Fort Nelson at 50 below to Ecuador at 88 above. That was an interesting experience. But all of those weather changes, affected. So last year, we shut down the 15th of June, and it was really interesting because those that know Ben Howden here, his son Corey is managing the plant up in Ecuador, or in Fort Nelson. He's in Nepal right now on my project there. But he kept calling me saying, Gary, the oil's not dropping off yet. I said, the oil's not dropping off? No, we're still getting good oil. And I said, don't worry about it, Corey. I said, it's because the ground temperature is still cold. He said, no, it can't be. He says, we're farming. And I said, doesn't matter, the ground temperature is still below 52 degrees. And he said, oh, okay. I said, the moment the ground temperature hits 52 degrees, the oil is gone. He called me up on June the 15th. He says, Gary, the oil's gone. I said, did you check the ground temperature? He said, yeah, 52 degrees. And as soon as the ground temperature drops below 52 degrees in the fall, the oil starts back up again.
I read that in the book, Biography, which was a great book, by the way. And I read that with the spruce, the colder the temperature,
the more oil,
the better the oil because of the
antifreeze. Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful phenomenon, and that's why you've heard me say that when you work with the plants and you work with the dirt, and particularly in distillation,
where it brings it together, you can't deny there's a God. You know, it's just so beautiful to watch that whole balance and the equilibrium in it, and how the plants self-regulate, and how they protect, and you know, it was all designed for that purpose. So it's beautiful. But this year, because of the warmer climate in Fort Nelson, I expect to get a call any day. We're shut down because the ground temperatures, you know, coming up. And look at what's happening in Fort Nelson or Fort McMurray with the horrible fires there. I mean, here's a country that should still be under 2 feet of ice. And it's the largest fire in all of North America today. Yeah, it's horrible, and the amount of people that's homeless, and yeah, it's devastating. So. And it's burning up thousands and thousands of acres of black spruce. And when I learned about this 4 days ago, when it was, it really set me back. And I'll tell you why. Is because Fort McMurray was one of the sites that I chose to go build a distillery. And I chose to go there because of the amount of black spruce and the abundance of it, and feeling that it was a better location. And that's where I pushed. And yet the chairman of Commerce in Fort McMurray would never respond to me. And even though I sent letters, they never responded. So I aborted. And Fort Nelson did respond to me and went there. And I kept wondering, why the Chamber of Commerce never responded to me? And I just got goosebumps when I heard about it. That if I built the distillery there, it would be gone.
That's right.
And no trees even afterwards, because they're burned up. So, you know, God really takes care of us. He really takes care of us, and it's just beautiful. Next question. Outside people naturally wouldn't know, and even people who distill don't even think about it. When materials, whether it's lavender flowers or rosemary leaves or balsam chips or sandalwood sawdust, the minute it starts to heat, it starts to distill. So this up on top is great. And this is fine. If this was left to sit here till tomorrow, it would start distilling. If it was left to sit until Friday, it would be distilled. Now, what does that mean? It's distilled. Well, where is the oil going? The oil starts to homogenize inside the plant because it's at a vapor state at this point. It's not a liquid state, it's vapor. And so the vapor inside of the fiber of the material can exit and regress in and out of that channel that the molecule pockets lay in very easily, and it all happens just from temperature. The temperature creates the first stage of what's called homogenization, which is part of decomposing of the wood. The decomposing is what allows the enzymes to activate inside the channel that the molecules are in, to break it down, to soften it, to release it so it can go out. Now, if the distillator operator wasn't paying attention to this and left it set for 3 or 4 days, it would decompose, the enzymes will activate, soften the fiber, the oil would then migrate into the channel and homogenize as liquid. So when you put it in the cooker and cook it, you would get liquid more than you would oil. And it would be very, almost brackish type, because it's already had the enzymatic activity taking place between the wood and the oil vapor itself. So that whole interaction. And so when that happens, the distillery is not really anxious about throwing away 50 gallons, or which is what would get produced in a full distillation of sandalwood oil. It wouldn't matter if it was 5 gallons. If you figure 5 gallons at $2,500 a gallon, or $2,500 a quart approximately,
So 4 times that for a gallon of sandalwood oil to the operator. He's not really excited about throwing it away. So what happens? What do most companies do with that?
Sell it to other people.
Some do and some don't. What most do is then they cut it. They cut it to make it have the appearance of sandalwood oil by adding synthetic sandalol to it. And it goes out on the market and that looks fine. But here's the thing with oils, these young people that are pretending to be GC operators have never figured out yet. There's X number of percentage of molecules in every oil. In a GC mass spec operation, you will never see 100% molecules in an essential oil. And why is that? Because there are compounds in there that aren't identified. There's some that are just labeled as unknown because they haven't identified because they're so minute. Now, it's not unusual to identify 98, even up to 99% of the molecules, but you will never identify 100%. But in another company that's out there, they're specialists at it because they come up with their analysis of 320% of 100%. Their lavender oil has 320% molecules in it. So how do you get 320% out of 100%? And they haven't even figured that out yet. It doesn't happen. It's because of all the synthetic molecules they added to it adds up to 320%. And so people, you know, they're marketers and they think, oh, the more molecules, the better it looks. You know, the purer it is. But my point being that in that, we'll say 99% range of molecules that are identifiable, every one of those molecules has a specific percentage range. Might be 0.2, it might be 0.1, but there's always a percentage range. Your top 10 molecules will generally make up 60% of that oil. So when you're looking at your printout, if you know what you're looking at and you look at your molecules, you say, okay, we got 45, 48% sandalol. That's really good. If you got greater or less than that parameter, then you know something is wrong. Now that doesn't mean the oil has been cut either, because you can distill any oil wrong and come out with a whole different chemistry. You can it's like, I showed the guys this just a couple of weeks ago down at the Mona farm. I had to remove a tree in front of our house by our garage because when I bought the house, it was only 6 feet tall. Last week, when we cut it down, it was over 40 feet tall and as big around as this, and it lifted all the cement and was starting to go under the corner of the garage. So Mary, she said, honey, you've got to take that tree down. I said, no, I can't cut a tree down. She said, you got to, it's going to come in the garage. I said, that's okay, it's welcome. But she had a different opinion, so the tree's gone. And I have a black eye. About emotions and oils, and you might have to put the pieces of the puzzles together to figure out how to take care of your cold. But I'm going to teach you how to do it with emotions. Okay? Here's the thing, folks. It doesn't matter whether it's cancer, heart disease, arthritis, diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, part-timers, whatever. Every what's called an ailment is connected to an emotion. What I want to teach you is how to balance your emotions with essential oils and prevent these issues from happening. How to empower yourself and overcome issues that you've had that are holding you back. I'm very excited. Some of you might know about the men's camp that I've put together for men only. And why am I choosing to do that? And I'll tell you why. I taught a man's camp years ago before Young Living
and there was a huge need for it. I wasn't able to keep it going because I was so busy with my clinic in those days, but I did it twice, and then I did some small engagements with a couple of other people that did retreats and that for men. But there was a need, and in Young Living, there's a need, a huge need, and I'll tell you why. Is because we're 80% plus women, and you gals have dominated the scenes for the last 22 years. And why? Is because your husbands, most of them were working, you know, paying for you to play with oils, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, your check become bigger than theirs. And it was just something that just happened out of love of what you were doing. But there's been a separation because some of our ladies have just gotten so excited, they kind of forgot to bring their husbands along with them. And gals, us guys are really inferior when it comes down to the truth of things. We're an inferior race, and we know it even though we tell you that you're the inferior one. And you've been told that for thousands of years, and you've been locked in closets, and you've been burned at the stake, and you've been called witches, and you've been everything. But over the time, man still has never given up his inferior complex of being less than his counterpart. But what the men in Young Living want is they really want to be part of this whole family. The men don't want to feel like they're separated, and that it's a wife's thing and the man is left behind, because it's not. You know, so the men's camp, my objective is to help them deal with the issues, the insecurities, where it all comes down from, to find their place where they can fit in the Young Living family, fit in with their personal family, and add to rather than take away. Empower instead of decompress. And find their place in that position as a family
So
together.
You're speaking to something that, like, you know, my wife has been doing essential oils for 2.5 years now, and it's changed our lives, and it's been an amazing thing. And you're speaking with passion about something that I've been doing photography for 18 plus years. It's been a beautiful thing, but I have asked myself that over and over and over. When I saw this, I jumped on it. I said, I'm going to spend a few days with Gary. He's going to talk to men about this. And I thought, yes. And I think that as couples, we all know that we thrive more completely with that synergy.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can do that, it will help the growth of the company. Not that company is all about growth, but education and truth. And so, thank you for doing this. So I'm very excited.
My goal is to empower and bring together.
Yeah.
You know, because things happen when we feel insecure. We do things that are not productive because of insecurity, and insecurity causes us to want to have attention. And sometimes we get that attention by arguing with our spouse, or not wanting to understand, or saying, oh, this is ridiculous, you know, I need you helping me here, I don't need you chasing that Young Living stuff. Or, you know, I mean, whatever it is. It just happens, and it's happened a lot, and it's caused a lot of separation. I want to stop that. And it stops by understanding. You know, this is not about, Young Living is not a female organization. It's not a male organization. It's a man and woman family organization. And it's about empowering us all to understand how to find ourselves inside and align with that, to empower as a couple to do more and greater. And not just that alone, but to do more and greater as a couple, but to do more and greater as an example to the world. You know, Young Living is the example to the world. And so we have to create and find that balance in our whole life, and how we can empower that to bring more of an example to the world and strengthen relationships. You know, it's like I often say, you fell in love with her once. What happened? You know, and couples come and go, and couples separate and go different ways, and I've been a victim of it too. And I understand that. I've been through it twice, and it's not fun. And I look back, I've never stopped looking back and just analyzing what took place. Could have I done something different? In my first marriage, that might have been different, but I reacted different because of my condition. I was sitting in a wheelchair. I was paralyzed, an invalid. My wife was upset. She'd just cry, and I just want my Gary back. And I say, he's right here. I just can't stand. I can't walk. You know, I can't feed myself right now. But she couldn't deal with it, and I didn't know how to help her deal with it. And so I would feel her drawing away from me. And what's the human response when you feel somebody going away from you? You get angry. You fight to get them back. Well, your fighting drives them further and further away. And so, you know, I look at my life and what I've been through, and could things have been different? Of course, it could have been different. Could have I done things different if I would have had some coaching or had some understanding? Yeah, it could have been different. And then you can always go and say, well, yeah, but if things had been different, you wouldn't have Mary and Jacob and Joseph. You don't miss what you don't have. You build on what you have at the moment. And marriage, romance, never is the same from that honeymoon to 5 years, even 12 months later. And all of you know that. But love is something that you nurture, you grow, you develop in time, and it becomes like fine wine. The more you nurture it, the better it gets. But we are not taught how to nurture it. We're not taught how to bring the best out of a relationship. What we look around us and we see all these examples of couples that just argue and fight. And so we think, oh, well, that's how you deal with a problem. Argue and fight, you know? And so when we go into that mode, God just says goodbye and walks away. And now he's not in the equation either. No, but if you love somebody, you find that substance that was there in the beginning, and you rekindle it. And you rebuild it. And you grow it. And you grow it into something that is greater and more beautiful than ever was from the beginning. That's what can really do it. And it took me 3 marriages to learn that. And so I felt, okay, if I can take my learning curve and I can utilize some of that to help teach and help coach and save somebody else from going through what I went through, then it's all worth it. But the number one is finding inside your self-worth. That's where it all has to start at. And what's caused the insecurity in self? You know, and getting in touch with that. So in our class, we're going to be doing a lot of things. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but we're going to do a lot of practical things. It's going to bring out some of those hidden things that we may have forgotten that were there, but they're still digging us in the ribs every time we put the saddle on, and just working through it. I'm going to be taking the guys into adventures to see how much fear they can deal with. One of the things I've done in the past that's so amazing, and I'm giving a little bit of information away here, but I've taken guys at night and taken them into the mountains and left them. And boy, you talk about it.
I don't know if you should be telling all the guys this right here, because actually it's a really great place to stop, because everybody is waiting on us.
Oh,
everybody,
okay.
for us to go off this mountain, and it is actually not raining.
But there's just
so there is a dinner tonight, so
a lot of different ways, different things that, you know, we're going to walk through in this process. And